Mark Zuckerberg is not a nice man. I don't know if it's even possible to be a nice man and also have a net worth of $60 billion or so. I don't think you can. I think you need a level of ruthlessness to make that much money and not to lose control of it. You get a sense that in the biographical movie about him called The Social Network, you get a feeling for that. I know it's just a Hollywood dramatization, but the basic facts of the movie check out. How he stole other people's data and then stole ideas for Facebook from his classmates and stole the shares of his co-founders. Stole is a big word. He didn't commit any crimes, but I don't think anyone would dispute that Mark Zuckerberg is a sociopath. Here's a story from Business Insider quoting an instant message conversation he had with a classmate when he was at Harvard, tinkering with the idea behind Facebook. If you recall, he started by harvesting any public photos of women at college and then having men vote if they were hot or not. So that's the starting point here. Here's the exchange. Zuck. Yeah, so if you ever need info about anyone at Harvard, just ask. I have over 4,000 emails, pictures, addresses. What? How do you manage that one? People just submitted it. I don't know why. They trust me. Dumb F-U-C-K-S. Do you think he was joking about that? I don't think Zuckerberg knows how to make a joke. Look at how weird he is.
You know, one of the crazy things when you do these live Q&As is some of them are very silly. So we got one. Mark, are the allegations true that you are secretly a lizard? I'm gonna have to go with no on that. I am not a lizard, but you know, keep the high quality comments coming in.
I don't think he's a lizard. I don't think he's as lovable as a lizard. But there's more than a grain of truth to his rant insulting his own users. They love to share information with Facebook. People love to give him their private data. Problem is, they don't know everything they're giving him, and he's doing things with their data that he doesn't tell them he's doing. That's because with Facebook, you are the product that is being bought and sold. I suppose every tech company does that to a degree. Even before tech was a thing, companies would build up a little file about you, the things you've bought in the past, the things you like and don't like. But Facebook is different. Apple, they sell you a computer, they sell you a phone, they sell you some music through iTunes. Amazon sells you books, and now everything else, including TV shows. But what exactly does Facebook sell you? No, it sells you to companies. And it lies about it. And when Zuckerberg is caught and can't wriggle out of it, he makes a deep, heartfelt apology that he surely practiced in the mirror 100 times. And then he just does it all over again for 14 years. According to this story by a tech magazine called Wired, 14 years. He's violated the trust of those dumb F-U-C-K-S who give him that personal information. 14 years, he's apologized, and then he did it again. And then he apologized and he did it again. And maybe you would do that too if it would make you one of the richest men in the history of the world. Here he is almost a decade ago, lying, apologizing for lying, and then lying.
Do you feel like it's a backlash, or do you feel like you're violating people's privacy? Do you feel like you're adequately portrayed as a... Because I want to wonder about the person who actually created this thing.
Yeah, I mean... you know, a lot of stuff happened along the way. I think, you know, there were real learning points and turning points along the way in terms of building things. If I knew what I knew now then I hope I wouldn't have made those mistakes. But I can't go back and change the past. I can only do what we think is the right thing going forward.
So, before we move off this privacy thing, and I thought that was a fascinating answer.
It's okay. You want to take off the hoodie?
You know, I never take off the hoodie.
I know you don't. What's with that? There's a group of women in the audience that wish you would. And...
no.
Girls?
Whoa.
All right.
Sorry. Yeah, that's okay.
Maybe I should take off the hoodie.
Take off the hoodie.
Go ahead.
You want to? Are you hot? Go ahead. Here. Can you get someone? You all right?
Yeah.
This is a great moment in internet history.
What?
All right.
Today he's a 33-year-old man who still dresses like he's a college teenager, partly because he can when you're worth $60 billion, you dress however you want, but partly because it's part of his shtick. Oh, I'm just a geeky college nerd building this super cool website. I'm not some corporate suit. I'm just like you, a live, natural human with feelings. You can trust me. So share your photos and stories and emails and all your likes and dislikes with me. I mean, I'm wearing a hoodie. I can't be that bad. Well, Zuckerberg testified yesterday in the American Congress, and he's doing so again today, and he put on a suit this time. I think the hoodie shtick is wearing a bit thin. He's still about deceiving in small and large ways, tiny things, like putting a booster seat, an extra thick cushion on his chair. That's sort of weird. Not to make it more comfortable, but to make him seem less small, maybe? Or something, more manipulation. Just like the hoodie. Just a small thing, but it's still a thing. It was the biggest hearings in Congress in recent memory. Look at all the media attention, every politician wanting to get a shot in, or in their own way to defend Zuckerberg. I mean, the politicians who were grilling Zuckerberg, they've received hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations from Zuckerberg. That's what happens when you have $60 billion. You can throw around campaign donations, $1,000 bills like they're nickels or something. Zuckerberg's testimony was hours long, and it went on again today. I started going through it. I'd like to show you 13 clips I chose from my comments in between. It's going to take up the whole show today. We just had too much stuff on Zuckerberg, so we canceled the guests. I hope you don't mind. This is going to be a long show, but I'm quite sure this is the only place you're going to see going through these clip by clip with my analysis. We'll see. Let's start with this clip from a Democrat from Illinois, Senator Dick Durbin. I thought it was clever. Take a look.
Mr. Zuckerberg, would you be comfortable sharing with us the name of the hotel you stayed in last night?
No.
If you've messaged anybody this week, would you share with us the names of the people you've messaged?
Senator, no, I would probably not choose to do that publicly here.
Well, that's the thing. We wouldn't want that information shared publicly, would we? We'd only want to share that private information with our friends and family, and that's easy enough to control on Facebook. That's the fun part of Facebook, the social, in the social network. But Facebook has been selling that information to everyone and anyone. That's their business model. And you are the product, remember, and you're the dumb F-U-C-K who lets him get away with it. But like I say, every year or so, Zuckerberg issues the same apology. I wonder if he's ever literally be reading the same piece of paper with the exact words that he just used last time. I wonder if he does that as some sort of inside joke with himself. It literally reads the same apology he used last time. Here's yesterday's version of the apology.
We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a big mistake. And it was my mistake, and I'm sorry. I started Facebook, I run it, and I'm responsible for what happens here.
You know, that suggests that it is unwitting, or maybe just neglect, or even an accident, as opposed to being the essence of Zuckerberg's business plan since the very beginning. Now, some of the hearing was about Russia and hacking the 2006 presidential election. Of course it was, and it's true that some Russians spent $100,000 or so on politics on Facebook in the middle of a multi-billion-dollar election campaign. Here's what Facebook's vice president of ads actually had to say about that. He said, most of the coverage of Russian meddling involves their attempt to affect the outcome of the 2016 election. I have seen all of the Russian ads, and I can say very definitively that swaying the election was not the main goal. Oh, really? Here's another tweet by Goldman. The majority of the Russian ad spend happened after the election. We shared that fact, but very few outlets have covered it because it doesn't align with the main media narrative of Trump and the election. And one more tweet. The single best demonstration of Russia's true motives is the Houston anti-Islamic protests. Americans were literally puppeted into the streets by trolls who organized both sides of the protest. So yeah, that whole Russia thing, it's a nothing burger. You already knew that, I'm sure, after a year of media obsession. There's nothing there. So I'm going to skip those parts of the hearing, except in one case. Anyways, let me move on to the next clip. This is from Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa. Take a look.
My question. Why doesn't Facebook disclose to its users all the ways the data might be used by Facebook and other third parties And what is Facebook's responsibility to inform users about that information?
Mr. Chairman, I believe it's important to tell people exactly how the information that they share on Facebook is going to be used. That's why every single time you go to share something on Facebook, whether it's a photo in Facebook or a message in Messenger or WhatsApp, every single time there's a control right there about who you're going to be sharing it with, whether it's your friends or public or a specific group, and you can change that and control that in line.
See, there's a trick there, and Zuckerberg does it a lot. And I think he's getting away with it, even in Congress, where you have smart senators, they're smart, and smarter staff of senators writing the questions for them. But Zuckerberg is asked about privacy a lot, and I think people mean privacy as against Facebook itself, as against the people to whom Facebook would sell your information. But Zuckerberg does this trick. He pivots and he says, you control what your friends see and don't see. But you see how he switched it there? It's true, on Facebook you can determine what pictures of yours or what comments of yours are visible to only your friends or to the whole world. But that's not what anybody's worried about. We're worried about what Facebook does, not what our friends see. Zuckerberg's answer about his hotel room is on point. He can control who he tells about what hotels he's staying at. But if the hotel itself had the right to sell that information to anyone, and you couldn't opt out of that, and merely by staying at the hotel you granted that power to them and you didn't know if they were doing it, that's Facebook. That's the analogy. Oh, and in my analogy, anything you said in the hotel or anything you did in the hotel would be for sale too. Here's another senator, John Thune of South Dakota, not impressed by the endless fake apology tour. And look at Zuckerberg's trick again.
After more than a decade of promises to do better, how is today's apology different? And why should we trust Facebook to make the necessary changes to ensure user privacy and give people a clearer picture of your privacy policies?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have made a lot of mistakes in running the company. I think it's pretty much impossible, I believe, to start a company in your dorm room and then grow it to be at the scale that we're at now without making some mistakes. And because our service is about helping people connect and information, those mistakes have been different in how we try not to make the same mistake multiple times, but in general, a lot of the mistakes are around how people connect to each other just because of the nature of the service.
I suppose every company starts from one person. That's not much of an excuse, is it? But it does reinforce, I'm just a college geek, pay no attention to any darker details. Would you like a hoodie or maybe a political donation? But look at the pivot. How people connect to each other. No. We all like that part of Facebook. If we use Facebook, we understand that part of Facebook. We see that part. We can control that part. It's the secret parts. It's connecting to Facebook itself. Or more accurately, it's how Facebook commodifies us and sells us to its advertisers. That's the problem, or at least one of the problems. And when he's pressed, he does another dodge. He moves from his own misconduct, selling your secrets secretly, to Russia, because he knows at least half the room, the Democrats, will appreciate that. Take a look.
What I think we've learned now across a number of issues, not just data privacy, but also fake news and foreign interference in elections, is that we need to take a more proactive role and a broader view of our responsibility. It's not enough to just build tools. We need to make sure that they're used for good. And that means that we need to now take a more active view in policing the ecosystem and in watching and kind of looking out and making sure that all of the members in our community are using these tools in a way that's going to be good and healthy.
Fake news and foreign interference? Who wouldn't rather talk about that, even if his own Facebook vice president says it was nothing? Who wouldn't rather talk about that than talk about selling the secrets of his $2 billion customers? And look at the other bait and switch. He said he's going to police, that's his words, police users to make sure they're using the tools of Facebook in a good and healthy way, by which he means policing citizens, you and me, about what we can say. He'll judge if our ideas that we share with our friends are good and healthy. He'll be the judge of that. We had two black Republican women on the show yesterday who go by the professional name Diamond and Silk. They're fun, they're entertaining, they're pro-Trump commentators. Not a profane word, not a threatening word from them, but Facebook declared them unsafe, so they were censored. That's what Zuckerberg wants to crack down on, people like that misusing the tools. He doesn't want to police his own use of the tools, selling your secrets. How quickly he moved from blaming himself in another fake apology to blaming his own customers, by which I mean blaming the people that he sells. Senator Thune had more questions about Zuckerberg's censorship. Take a look.
Can you discuss what steps that Facebook currently takes when making these evaluations, the challenges that you face, and any examples of where you may draw the line between what is and what is not hate speech?
Some problems lend themselves more easily to AI solutions than others. So hate speech is one of the hardest because determining if something is hate speech is very linguistically nuanced, right? You need to understand what is a slur and whether something is hateful, not just in English, but the majority of people on Facebook use it in languages that are different across the world. Hate speech, I am optimistic that over a 5 to 10 year period, we will have AI tools that can get into some of the nuances, the linguistic nuances of different types of content to be more accurate in flagging things for our systems. But today, we're just not there on that. So a lot of this is still reactive. People flag it to us. We have people look at it. We have policies to try to make it as not subjective as possible. But until we get it more automated, there's a higher error rate than I'm happy with.
A lot in there, including a promise to build an artificial intelligence system to stop you from having the wrong feelings. That's what hate is, a feeling. We all hate things. It's a natural human emotion. You can't ban it. You can't ban people from expressing words motivated by that feeling. Do you hate a movie? Do you hate a song? Do you hate a rival sports team? Do you hate a political party? Do you hate Facebook? Do you hate your addiction to Facebook? Do you hate a religion? Do you hate your own religion? Well, Mark Zuckerberg is designing a computer that will judge your feelings and censor the bad ones. Do you trust him to do that? He's going to ban what he calls slurs, which is another way of saying an insult. So no more comedy of any stripe, of course. Or will it just be no more conservative commentary? I don't know. The left is full of slurs towards its enemies. I've never seen a liberal site shut down on social media for being too rude. Ever. Can you name one? Let's switch gears. There's so much to cover. I won't cover it all. Here's Senator Wicker from Mississippi.
There have been reports that Facebook can track a user's internet browsing activity even after that user has logged off of the Facebook platform. Can you confirm whether or not this is true?
Senator, I want to make sure I get this accurate, so it would probably be better to have my team follow up
So you
afterwards.
don't know?
Do you really think that the lizard man there doesn't know? Really? Do you really think that Mark Zuckerberg does not know if Facebook can track your user activity even if you've logged out? That's a pretty weird and dramatic question, isn't it? To not say no to it immediately is really another way of saying yes. But Zuckerberg will get back to him. I'll have my people get back to you. Here's Senator Graham asking about Zuckerberg's tricks, not about people connecting with each other or people having the wrong feelings about each other, but rather how Zuckerberg uses people.
When you sign up for Facebook, you sign up for terms of service. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay. It says, the terms govern your use of Facebook and the products, features, apps, services, technologies, software we offer, Facebook's products or products, except where we expressly state that separate terms and not these apply. I'm a lawyer, I have no idea what that means. But when you look at terms of service, this is what you get. Do you think the average consumer understands what they're signing up for?
I don't think that the average person likely reads that whole document.
Right, or as he said back in college, those dumb F-U-C-K-S. Here, take a look. Here's Senator Ted Cruz from Texas on Facebook's liberal bias. And I can assure you from personal experience that YouTube, Google, and Twitter are actually worse. This is the longest clip I'm going to show you today, but it's an interesting one. Take a look.
Mr. Zuckerberg, does Facebook consider itself a neutral public forum?
Senator, we consider ourselves to be a platform for all ideas.
Let me ask the question again. Does Facebook consider itself to be a neutral public forum? And representatives of your company have given conflicting answers on this. Are you a First Amendment speaker expressing your views, or are you a neutral public forum allowing everyone to speak? Well, Mr. Zuckerberg, I will say there are a great many Americans who I think are deeply concerned that Facebook and other tech companies are engaged in a pervasive pattern of bias and political censorship. There have been numerous instances with Facebook. In May of 2016, Gizmodo reported that Facebook had purposely and routinely suppressed conservative stories from trending news, including stories about CPAC, including stories about Mitt Romney, including stories about the Lois Lerner IRS scandal, including stories about Glenn Beck. In addition to that, Facebook has initially shut down the Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day page, has blocked a post of a Fox News reporter, has blocked over 24 Catholic pages, and most recently blocked Trump supporters Diamond and Silk's page with 1.2 million Facebook followers after determining their content and brand were, quote, unsafe to the community. To a great many Americans, that appears to be a pervasive pattern of political bias. Do you agree with that assessment?
Senator, let me say a few things about this. First, I understand where that concern is coming from because Facebook and the tech industry are located in Silicon Valley, which is an extremely left-leaning place. And this is actually a concern that I have and that I try to root out at the company, is making sure that we don't have any bias in the work that we do. And I think it is a fair concern that that people would at least wonder about.
Let me ask this question. Are you aware of any ad or page that has been taken down from Planned Parenthood?
Senator, I'm not, but let me just...
How about MoveOn.org?
Sorry?
How about MoveOn.org?
I'm not specifically aware of those.
How about any Democratic candidate for office?
I'm not specifically aware. I mean, I'm not sure.
In your testimony, you say that you have 15,000 to 20,000 people working on security and content review. Do you know the political orientation of those 15,000 to 20,000 people engaged in content review?
No, Senator. We do not generally ask people about their political orientation when they're joining the company.
So as CEO, have you ever made hiring or firing decisions based on political positions or what candidates they supported?
No.
Why was Palmer Luckey fired?
That is a specific personnel matter that seems like it would be inappropriate to speak to here.
You just made a specific representation that you didn't make decisions based on political views.
Well,
is that accurate?
I can commit that it was not because of a political view.
Do you know of those 15,000 to 20,000 people engaged in content review, how many, if any, have ever supported financially a Republican candidate for office?
Senator, I do not know that.
Got it. So Facebook knows the political leanings and 100 other private details about 2 billion of its users. But it doesn't know the political leanings of its 20,000 censors. Do you believe that? Yeah. Palmer Luckey, by the way, if you're curious, is a brilliant tech inventor, really built the world's whole virtual reality video game trend. Very successful. Fired after publicly supporting Donald Trump. But let me emphasize what he really said there. He's hiring 20,000 censors.
And as I said before, by the end of this year, we're going to have more than 20,000 people at the company working on security and content review because this is important. Over time, we're going to shift increasingly to a method where more of this content is flagged upfront by AI tools that we develop.
You don't need 20,000 censors to take down an Al-Qaeda manual. As Zuckerberg said elsewhere in the hearings, that's done by machines, 99% successful. You need 20,000 human censors to go in and censor, as he said, nuances, feelings. The question that Ted Cruz asked about how Facebook sees itself, is it a platform for others to fill with their ideas, like a theater that would rent itself out to anyone? Or is it a company with its own ideas? That's an important question because it goes to regulation. A phone company is not liable for what you say on their telephones. Just for a moment, imagine if your phone company had Facebook's terms of service, if they could capture everything you said to your friends and then sell that secretly and censor what they didn't like you saying, either censoring you by artificial intelligence, having your phone cut off if you say the wrong things, or having one of 20,000 people listening into your conversations. That's exactly what Facebook does. In fact, it's not even really much of an analogy. It is sort of what they do. Facebook is how people message each other today, probably more even than phone calls anymore. Facebook does phone calls. Facebook does streaming video calls. But the point is, if you're taking positions about content, if you're editing and blocking and censoring, you're not neutral like the old-fashioned phone companies anymore. You're a publisher now. You're liable for things in a way the phone company isn't. You'd never sue the phone company for what someone says on the phone or isn't allowed to say. You'd never regulate that, but that is where Facebook is going. Look at this question from Senator Sass. Good question about hate speech, long exchange. It's the second last video clip. Take a look.
And you're a private company, so you can make policies that may be less than First Amendment full spirit embracing, in my view. But I worry about that. I worry about a world where when you go from violent groups to hate speech in a hurry, in one of your responses to one of the opening questions, you may decide, or Facebook may decide, it needs to police a whole bunch of speech that I think America might be better off not having policed by one company that has a really big and powerful platform. Can you define hate speech?
Senator, I think that this is a really hard question, and I think it's one of the reasons why we struggle with it. There are certain definitions that we have around calling for violence or
let's just agree on that. If somebody's calling for violence, that shouldn't be there. I'm worried about the psychological categories around speech. You used language of safety and protection earlier. We see this happening on college campuses all across the country. It's dangerous. 40% of Americans under age 35 tell pollsters they think the First Amendment is dangerous because you might use your freedom to say something that hurts somebody else's feelings. Guess what? There are some really passionately held views about the abortion issue on this panel today. Can you imagine a world where you might decide that pro-lifers are prohibited from speaking about their abortion views on your content, on your platform?
I certainly would not want that to be the case.
But it might really be unsettling to people who've had an abortion to have an open debate about that, wouldn't it?
It might be, but I don't think that would fit any of the definitions of what we have. But I do generally agree with the point that you're making, which is as we're able to technologically shift towards, especially having AI proactively look at content, I think that that's going to create massive questions for society about what obligations we want to require companies to fulfill. And I do think that that's a question that we need to struggle with as a country, because I know other countries are, and they're putting laws in place. And I think that America needs to figure out and create the set of principles that we want American companies to operate under.
Well, I can tell you that kind of censorship about issues as mainstream as the abortion debate, they are censored literally every day, probably every single second by Facebook. We ourselves here at The Rebel are censored routinely about normal political debates. Look at this tweet from our talent, John Cardillo, just a few days ago. John sometimes spends a few bucks of his own money boosting Facebook posts. That means he pays Facebook a few bucks to show his Facebook posts to his own friends. That's another con, by the way. Facebook says you have friends, but it won't show all of your material to your friends. It just won't, unless you pay them to do it. Did you know that? So John tried to do that, but they blocked him. Did you see that? I don't know if you understood what John tweeted there. His posts were approved by the artificial intelligence system. They were approved, but then 2 hours later, one of Zuckerberg's censors didn't like it. Of course not. We're conservative. John is conservative. They're far left. Here's Senator Sullivan from Alaska. This is my last clip of the day. He talks about two things. If Facebook is a publisher responsible for what's on its system, and how Facebook would love regulations by government because it could game them, it could afford them, it could torque them against any competitors. It would just slosh some more lobbying money around. Here, take a look.
Let me talk about the tension there, because I think it's a good point, and I appreciate you mentioning that. You know, one of my worries on regulation, again, with a company of your size, you're saying, hey, we might be interested in being regulated, but as you know, regulations can also cement the dominant power. So what do I mean by that? You know, you have a lot of lobbyists. I think every lobbyist in town is involved in this hearing in some way or another, a lot of powerful interests. You look at what happened with Dodd-Frank. That was supposed to be aimed at the big banks. The regulations ended up empowering the big banks and keeping the small banks down. Do you think that that's a risk, given your influence, that if we regulate, we're actually going to regulate into you into a position of cemented authority, when one of my biggest concerns about what you guys are doing is that the next Facebook, which we all want, the guy in the dorm room, we all want that to start it, that you are becoming so dominant that we're not able to have that next Facebook. What are your views on that?
Well, Senator, I agree with the point that when you're thinking through regulation across all industries, you need to be careful that it doesn't cement in the current companies that are winning.
But would you try to do that? Isn't that the normal inclination of a company to say, hey, I'm going to hire the best guys in town and I'm going to cement in an advantage? You wouldn't do that if we were regulating you?
Senator, that certainly wouldn't be our approach. But I think part of the challenge with regulation in general is that when you add more rules that companies need to follow, that's something that a larger company like ours inherently just has the resources to go do, and that might just be harder for a smaller company getting started to be able to comply with.
Correct.
So it's not something that, like, going into this, I would look at the conversation as what is the right outcome. I think there are real challenges that we face around content and privacy and in a number of other areas, ads transparency, elections.
Let me get, I'm sorry to interrupt, but let me get to one final question that kind of relates to what you're talking about in terms of content, regulation, and what exactly Facebook is. You know, you mentioned you're a tech company, a platform, but there's some who are saying that you're the world's biggest publisher. I think about 140 million Americans get their news from Facebook, and when you talk to when you mentioned to Senator Cornyn, you said you are responsible for your content. So which are you? Are you a tech company, or are you the world's largest publisher? Because I think that goes to a really important question on what form of regulation or government action, if any, we would take.
Senator, this is a really big question. I view us as a tech company because the primary thing that we do is build technology and products.
But you said you're responsible for your content, which makes
you
kind of a publisher, right?
Well, I agree that we're responsible for the content, but we don't produce the content. I think that when people ask us if we're a media company or a publisher, my understanding of what the heart of what they're really getting at is, do we feel a responsibility for the content on our platform? The answer to that, I think, is clearly yes. But I don't think that that's incompatible with fundamentally at our core being a technology company where the main thing that we do is have engineers and build products.
All right, that's too many clips. Thanks for bearing with me if you're still watching. And I didn't even go through all the interesting ones from today. I didn't even get through half of them yesterday. It's really an extraordinarily long testimony. But let me sum it up for you, okay? Mark Zuckerberg is a serial liar. He has said for a decade that he's going to stop selling his customers' private information. He has not stopped. How could he? It's his central business model. When pressed, he blames the victim. He says users are either stupid, dumb F-U-C-K-S, or they don't read the contract, the terms of service, or they're the ones causing the problem. He always shifts the conversation away from what he's doing with their data that they can't control and they don't even know about. He blames them. When he gets really agitated, he plays the Russia card, the fake Russia card, the fake news card, and again he lies, according to his own vice president in charge of ads, but he uses it as an excuse to hire 20,000 human censors just until his robot censors can take over. How do you feel about that? And he's going after hurt feelings and the human emotion of hate that just happens 100% of the time to target conservatives. Isn't that a coincidence? That's Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, a leading donor to many of the congressmen to whom he spoke.
That's an excerpt from my daily TV show, The Ezra Levant Show. Normally it's behind a paywall, but I thought you'd like this video, so we put it on YouTube. If you want to subscribe to watch the daily show every day, including always 2 interviews a day, and I read my hate mail, just click on this screen and become a premium member.